Got it.
Mm-hmm.
When you get it, you've got it.
Live from the ballroom high atop Plutopia Towers in beautiful uptown, downtown. This is Plutopia Live, and we're going to rehash and remodel and regurgitate the year 2023 in hopes that it is gone forever. I'm Scoop Sweeney. She's the corporate mystic. And that guy over there in South Austin, that's John Lebkowski. Hello, John Lebkowski.
I'm here. Hello.
Hello,
What's
John.
up? Welcome to the last remaining embers of the year,
And
2023.
what a year it was. Wasn't it a good? No, it wasn't. So never mind.
As a
It
perfect
was a
segue,
very interesting year.
as a perfect segue into the show, I got to watch the NBC nightly news in memoriam right before we came. So I got to see the long list of all the people who died this year. So that's like really fresh in my head. If there's anybody, if you're wondering if they're still alive or not from this year, I can probably tell you.
Yeah, the weird part of that is most of them are my age group. It's like, oh, well, that's encouraging. I'm going to be the Lone Ranger someday. I hope.
There was a swath of individuals that felt like they were of a generation. That is for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was definitely
Well,
true.
we've made our way into that age group, I guess.
The age.
I don't know. I mean, I just say goodbye each time somebody goes.
I
don't
feel
know
like
what else to
I
do.
always recall like 2016 was like one of those like really crazy years where a whole bunch of kind of before their time people were like, that was like Carrie Fisher and Prince and all these people that just like were unexpected, and it was just an enormous amount of people that seemed maybe outside of a generation that, and this year it was of a certain generation. I definitely agree with that, but it seemed like there were a lot fewer young people in a particular way, like a lot less early deaths. And so I don't know what that says about our time period, but something about it felt like mourning and passing, but also like honoring and celebrating. Like there was something about it that was like really, there were some really great people that were honored, and I just thought that was, I don't know, it was meaningful to me. I
have a feeling that some of those tributes are edited by people of a certain generation. So they may go, those young kids, so they concentrate on the oldies. They're like, no, you kind of have to share it among all the generations, but they don't seem to.
It was pretty robust. It was like really, I don't know. It was well done. You should look it up and check it out. They used music very well throughout the entire thing. And that was also, I thought, something that was like honored in an interesting way. It was really mostly focused on entertainment. So, I'll be looking forward personally to CBS Sunday Morning News because they have my favorite in totality in memoriam every year. So I just thought if we were going to talk about 2023 in the dust, we'd start, with ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and work our way up.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I always figure that human beings they're really verbs, not nouns. And sooner or later, they encounter a period.
Isn't that the truth? That's a beautiful thought. I like
the
energy of that in a particular way.
Well, I'm going to keep a bunch of commas handy just in case.
There's always a bunch of commas in everybody's life.
Several exclamation points.
Comma.
Well, I mean, we could start talking about 2023 with late news, and I suppose the one that I kept hearing about today was how Nikki Haley had kind of screwed the pooch in her Q&A the other day. I guess she was having a town hall, and they asked her about the Civil War. What do you think the Civil War was about? And she seems to have forgot that slavery was involved there, though she talked a lot about it had to do with like protecting the individual rights, which I assume she means are the individual rights to keep slaves.
She's flexible.
I don't think that did her any good.
Am I the only person that feels like that was like she was like throwing her in the game a little bit? Like, I mean, it felt a little too intentional almost. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she forgets that there's this thing called video that goes back into your past where you said something that didn't agree, because back before she had the Confederate flag removed from the state capitol there as governor, she was going on defending the right to have that freedom that people thought that was represented by the Confederate flag. And it's like, okay, pick them all. And now she's blaming the Democrats. And it was a ringer from the Democratic Party that came in and asked her that question. So it's like,
yeah, I heard that.
It seemed too easy.
Well,
I mean, it seemed I don't know. It seemed she knows. I don't know. I don't trust things like that when I see them. I'm like, she knew the answer to that question, so she was why do that? She's not playing the game, or she's playing the game on someone else's behalf at this point. So
I think the lesson is that if you're going to make a word salad, you shouldn't forget the dressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget the croton.
She did kind of blather along there, quite a bit. Anyway, so that was one thing, and there have been things like that all year. And it seems like the Republican Party is just spiraling into some kind of weird Nazi fever dream. And I don't quite understand why they even want to go there. It's troubling. It's something that we never thought we would see, I think, in a United States political party, that a political party in the United States would grow to the point that they're actually hanging out with Nazis and glad handing them.
And repeat
that's pretty
Nazi catchphrases and dog whistles. It's just ridiculous. Who shall not be named. I try to avoid naming him now. Just keeps throwing those things out there right out of the Hitler archives. And Godwin has said that he's revising his Hitler theory. What was that he called it, John?
It was Godwin's law is what it's referred to.
Yeah, because I read something the other day that he'd modified it somewhat in light of what's going on politically.
Well, he's basically said it's okay to bring Hitler up in conversation now because it kind of makes sense. I mean, he was sort of making fun of people who quickly started throwing out Nazi analogies. They used to do that a lot back in the early days of the internet and Usenet and so forth. People would come up with Nazi analogies all too quickly and readily, and they usually were not apropos. But now what Godwin is saying is that it actually makes sense to start making these Nazi analogies because we actually have people who are behaving as though they were Nazis.
A Nazi by near the name that smells twice as bad. Is that our new?
Yeah. And they're in real positions of power in the United States, in the United States government. They have power.
This is why I would suggest that Nikki wasn't making just a faux pas on her answer, that she supports he who shall not be named in a way that, to me, what I saw appeared to be like somebody, like a girl playing dumb. And she's not actually an idiot. And so for me, she was making a choice in that statement to back out of moving forward, it wouldn't surprise me if she was the VP. It would, if he actually asked her to be his VP, because at the end of the day, she was making progress, and the answer that she gave, it just felt like a cop out. Like for her to just sit there and hold silence. And to the point of what y'all are saying, it's like it's very much in line and in tow with making sure that the all supreme ruler of this party is still the all supreme ruler, and that she's presenting a message. To me, what she did was a dog whistle in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't want to
not just
become VP except for perhaps Christie, because I know he doesn't want to be, because he knows what who shall not be named would do to him.
I don't think Christie
he
would.
was
Yeah,
VP.
Christie really hates. I think he has like true vitriol, and so he's got that driving him.
Mhm.
But she's, I think, different. Yeah, I think she's more flexible and more strategic. And like I said, I don't think she's exactly an idiot. I think she makes some. I think she says stupid things in the context of, beliefs I hold dear and things I think are fundamentally wrong. But I think in the context of what she does in her political career, she's making very calculated choices right now. And so
Is
I just
she
don't like
exactly an idiot?
like that and be like, oh, she just, made this stupid, like, oh, I don't know, slavery. Like, I think she knew exactly what she was doing by choosing to answer the way she answered. And all of
Well, the guy who was asking her the question missed an opportunity when she said, he mentioned slavery, and he said, well, she said, what do you want me to say about slavery? And he should have said, well, say that it's bad.
And we should be asking, why didn't he? When we say missed an opportunity again, I feel like we give grace to the media on both sides quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know if he was media. I think he was either just
a guy in the town hall,
just a guy, or was possibly a ringer. That happened quite often. I have some friends who were, famous ringers who would love to just show up and embarrass people with embarrassing questions at the
or create opportunities. Or create opportunities. And it's like I just say I hate to be so conspiracy theorist, because I'm really not functionally a conspiracy theorist about a lot of things except media, except what we get presented on screen is so calculated and so strategic. It's something that I have just a very low trust level for. And when I see stuff like that, when we see things like reality television, and we see how close reality television gets into blurred lines of like what's manipulated versus what's real, what's scripted versus what's actually, I don't see those types of situations as any different, because it's so, it's a formula that's been very, very well figured out that our society feeds upon. Yeah. And so there's, for me, it seems like a logical method to feed us content and information. And it also seems like just, again, I look at situations and it's very strategic what they select and what they choose to put out in particular ways. And there was just too many things about that felt like weird red flags to me. Like it felt kind of scripted in the way that whole scene played out. And when I watched it multiple times and was like, I just didn't trust what I was seeing, so I don't trust her. So I guess that's fine too. It's not like I should, but I don't know if my read on it felt the same as everybody else's, I guess.
Well, it's good not to trust your lying eyes.
Yeah, the whole thing.
I certainly don't trust anything I see.
The thing with reality TV, I have a friend used to be a sound guy that worked for me, and he ended up doing audio for reality TV productions in Hollywood. And I've talked to him a few times, and he said, yeah, it's not all that real, because there's a lot of scripting that goes on to this reality TV. It's like, yeah, it's designed to just appeal to the lowest common denominator urges of people. It's like, it doesn't really happen that way unless someone creates a situation where it just happens to happen in front of a camera.
It's much more produced than anybody would want us to believe. And it's not TV I consume, but I tell you, a lot of times when I'm watching political media, that's what I feel like. That's when I feel like I'm consuming reality television in Americana sort of way.
Yeah, that's the ultimate reality TV. There, any political event. I mean, God, watch any rally by anyone, and they have professional stage technicians who are in there manipulating everything.
Yes, very much so. Well, that's why I feel that way about what I witnessed with her. It felt very staged. It felt very scripted. It didn't even feel like she acted
it's always all about the narrative, right? And you're trying to create a narrative, and you're trying to, I mean, it's like pretty much our everyday life now is, we've all been watching movies, we've all been watching television for years. So our lives are now based on productions of narratives. So we're producing the narrative of our life, and we're doing it to a greater or lesser extent. And in politics, it's to a huge extent. Everything's being carefully produced and crafted and manipulated. And there's no fresh voices. There's no opportunity for somebody to kind of blurt out their real truth. One of the reasons I think that people like Donald Trump, those who do, is because he doesn't do that. I mean, he basically is like, well, yeah, I'm a terrible person, and I'm going to tell you how terrible I am every day. And for some reason, that seems to be compelling to some people, to have somebody honestly tell them how bad he is, and that makes them want to choose him as their leader. That's a little bizarre too, but I that's got to be some of his appeal, is just his honesty about his dishonesty.
He reveals everybody's shadow and alleviates them of all of their shame in the process. And so anybody who sort of judges themselves that way, or can look through, I mean, it's literally, and that's how he presents himself, and in a very and there's words I'm trying not to use because I just don't want to like add this level of like power or context to the conversation that we're having. But he presents himself in a particular way to a particular group of people, and he's tapping into their psyche in a way that is extremely, I would align it close, somewhat like addiction, in terms of how compelling it is to relieving a certain type of mental pain. And it's hard to understand, looking at it, because it seems so, I mean, gross, honestly. Like, it just seems so, like so debased. But that's the shadow. The shadow is like all of that, all of the shame of racism, all of the shame of misogyny, all the shame of all these things that you've been shamed. He's just out there going, fuck that. I'm good. Look at me. I'm a rich guy. I'm good. I've got a gorgeous wife. Like, what are you worried about? What are you worried about?
Yeah.
And how great does that feel to anybody who wants to not have to like be in that space, who wants to be given permission?
His gorgeous wife was missing from his family Christmas picture this year. I just happened to notice.
He's
so
been
I
missing
wonder what's
a lot
going on with her.
She's very MIA. Melania. I said recently that Melania puts the MIA in Melania. It's in there somewhere.
Well, his ex, one of his exes, blew the whistle on him about his having Hitler's memoirs in his nightstand and loved to read it. And it's like, oh, be careful what you show those people that you thrown out of your life. They come back in and embarrass you.
But again,
we should talk about the Lincoln Project's latest attack on Donald Trump. I think that they're onto something.
Oh, it's marvelous.
They're going after his scent, his smell, and the all the possibly rumors, but the story is, and many people tell this story, that he really smells bad and that he apparently has incontinence or some problem where he can't, where he has to have his diaper changed every so often.
Oh, now you're frightening me.
I know, and they're making a big deal about that. So they've got this great,
there's also like
video
really
commercial about it.
There's I don't know if they're referencing this, and beyond incontinence alone, there are really serious gut diseases that will cause an odor of sewage and an actual, and they're very, very like, if you have them, you're probably going to die. I mean, you're not going to probably live through that. And so to that point, it could also be an indication of his health at multiple levels.
I certainly don't want to be changing that diaper. That just that works on some really bad levels that I don't want to go down to.
I'm gonna pretend
there
like
has to be some poor staffer that that has to be their job if that is the case. And
I suspect he can change his own diaper. He looks capable of that.
Horribly down this path, let's just take a moment right now and thank all the good nurses in the world and all the caregivers in the world that are out there taking care of people in their lives that are having
that have to deal with things like that.
And I'm certain that somebody is paid to care for him, but the thing that I would venture to guess is nobody is doing that for him with love and empathy. If somebody is doing that for him, they're doing it because they're being paid to, and it's their job. And some of us have shit jobs, and that's a shit job.
Well, they're probably giving him as much love and empathy as they're getting,
maybe
from him.
Maybe, if that's possible, I would give
which
that.
Wouldn't be
and
much.
There could be somebody there that's like wholly, in that space for their own, personal spirit and being. But I don't think he's receiving it, because it's something that he really earns or does bestow. The last image that I saw of his two sons, I literally was like horrified at how they looked. Both of them looked skeletal to me, but in different ways. One of them looked skeletal because to me he looked kind of frail, and the other one looked skeletal because he looked like he had been doing excessive amounts of cocaine. And they were side by side, and I just thought, man, that is like, I would never, if my children looked like that, that would be devastating to me if my adult children.
Yeah, the way that they look is exactly like what I saw when I was on a trip to New York, and I went to some of the disco clubs up there that were heavily cocaine laced, and the people you looked at, they just had that look of there's that close to death from a really bad lifestyle, and they look like their lifestyle has really started to impact them. Plus, just the stress of being Donald Trump's son. That's
I think it would be very challenging. I find things like that, to me, it's like, it's that indication of toxicity, and that, that so many people just don't see all of that, that they just kind of, again, are, have this veil, where they're just blind to it. And, I don't know. It's amazing. I did see, I don't know, did y'all, so, cause like Colorado, got him off the ballot, and I guess that's still kind of, but Maine also tonight came out that they also removed him from their ballot, their ballot. So,
Lord,
oh, wow. Look at that.
This is the family Christmas photo. I said Melania was missing. The reason she's missing is actually because she's taking care of her mother. Her dad is there.
Her dad's there. Her dad.
Her mother is apparently ill, and Melania's with her, but everybody else is there. The whole crew. There's Barron Trump back there, right?
Yeah.
And as you can see, he's a head taller than pretty much anybody else in the family.
Barron is one tall dude. That is.
He is.
That is true. Wow, that was an image. Yeah, I was reading all the names and trying to figure out why Tiffany and her husband were so far apart. Um,
Oh, that's interesting.
you could
I
barely
don't
see
know.
him. He was almost hidden. Maybe he's on his way out. I don't know.
Well, I think that they were grouped according to height, yeah, in a certain way, but it also was, I don't know. It looks like it that they arranged it aesthetically
It was a lovely
to get a
family photo,
certain alignment.
and
Yeah, it is a nice family photo,
it was a
actually.
lovely family photo. There's,
What-
and maybe I was gonna say maybe Melania was taking the picture. She was, that happens with the women, and they're always the ones.
One thing that happened during this year is there are a lot of powerful Republicans who finally just said, this is too much, and I'm going home. And I'm seeing that in even people on the street that are obviously conservative who are just like, you know, I don't know who to vote for because they hate Biden, they hate Trump, they hate everyone. It's like there are all these people that are hitting it. They want to do a third party, which would just be a really disaster because every time that happens, it usually gets someone elected that probably shouldn't be elected.
Mhm.
Who do you think will make a try at a third party?
No, I'm thinking about that. I don't know if they remove Trump from all these ballots, then he may have to make a third
I mean,
party run.
I feel
I
like
don't know.
when we talk about Trump, it is a self-defined third party. Otherwise, you wouldn't have actual Republicans no longer being. I mean, and so there is a division there, and it seems to be like it's a pretty clear-cut platform level division. And at some point, that has to be acknowledged on some level or another. I mean, it is a divided party. So
Yeah.
is it? How can you call it a
Well,
party?
interesting question though. So they talk about how a majority of Republicans say that they favor Trump, but it's not really. It's just over 50%. It's not more than just a little over half.
Yeah, it's not like
So
87%.
and no, I don't think it's 87%. I
Yeah,
think that polls are showing him at what, 51, 52? Is it
right.
87? Well, maybe
No,
so for
that's what I'm saying.
Republicans.
It's not like it's like so extreme. I am agreeing with you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's very,
good.
very close, and so it is like there is a whole entire half of that party that is believes something different that isn't
Well,
that.
yeah, I mean, there's support for these various other people, like Nikki Haley being one, Ron DeSantis being another. I mean, they have a few votes, and if you could knock all but one of those other people out, it would be interesting to see whether those votes would go to the one that was left or to Trump. And I should add, I do not trust polls. I don't trust polls at all. I don't think that you can. That I think it's really difficult to get any kind of accurate sample in this day and age, and that it's hard to create a poll that accurately reflects um, any sense of what people in general are liable to do. And for that reason, there's a lot of polls right now that are saying that Biden is unpopular and that he may even, lose the election to whoever runs against him because of that. And I don't really believe those polls. I just don't believe that Biden is unpopular as they say that he is.
The polls
I mean,
election were all over the place, if you remember, and in 2016, the polls were all over the place. You couldn't really tell who was ahead because everybody had a different view of what the polls were saying.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
yeah.
in the interest of
Well,
traffic,
and
should be putting a T behind their names instead of an R. If you're an old school Republican, you should be allowed to have the R. If you're a Trump,
Mhm.
you have to have a T behind your name.
I think that is logical. And I
or
don't
an
know,
N
at
for
this point,
Nazi.
I don't understand why it's been avoided to the degree that it has. when there, I mean, there's a clear like 33% of support, you know, roughly give or take a few percent that are like just dead set Trump supporters, you know, and that range of people that are, they're not going to shift, they're not going to change. And then you have this group that, you know, maybe they align on some of the values, but it sounds, and if every time I talk to this, like kind of what feels like a larger and larger group of people where they are enough anti-liberal that they can't ever be that, but that when, you know, when it comes right down to it, they're begrudgingly going down this path that they feel less and less good about every day. They feel less and less, you know, like there used to be a lot more willingness and a lot more vocality around it. I think there's a lot there. I think there are going to be a lot more silent voters that are going to make these choices. And to your point about the polls, they're not going to say what they did, but they're going to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And so that group of people, they want somebody to rally around. They just don't see anybody that they can believe in fundamentally. And I don't think that they feel seen either. I think that they feel sort of lost in the mix of all this.
Yeah, the holy roller contingent of the Republican Party is beginning to shrink, and the ultra-conservative evangelical movement has actually started to have a negative impact on the churches, because a lot of these churches are losing membership because they've fallen in line behind all the evangelical support for Trump and for that whole way of thinking. And a lot of people that I've known, for my entire life, that were originally hardcore evangelicals are drifting away from that because they realized that their faith was hijacked.
Absolutely.
And that's happened to the Southern Baptist Church. The Southern Baptist Convention was
may have been fractured.
Was taken over by the Republican Party in the 70s, and
seriously,
downhill ever since.
No, well, there are Christians, and then there are people who go to the Christian church.
They're Christians.
Yeah, but we can't underestimate, again, I don't like to just like haul out blame people when we're dealing with very, very savvy, media-driven, psyche-driven manipulation of people. When you go into somebody's spiritual faith system and you have their connection to God giving you guidance on things that, fall into there's a reason that our country, was built on a concept around division of church and state. And it is about control, but it's also about that aspect of divine spirit and divine will. And like that manipulation to me is, evil. Like when you manipulate people's spiritual connection and their belief systems at that level for what are very, very, very like not divine purposes. There's no other way to call it. Politics are very of man, for man, by man, and that's fine. There's a place for that. But to bring it into spirituality and to blend those two things together in a way that really taints something that's very cherished and precious to many people. My grandmother at 96 years old she was a devout, I took her to church. She devoutly religious her whole life. And she whispered to me, I don't like that man. He's a bad man. But she's whispering it to me in her own home. That's how she felt like, and she was hearing this message, at her church, and it bothered her a whole bunch that this message was coming through a place that she went to seek, her own spiritual growth and her own spiritual comfort, so to speak. And so I think that there's something there that I don't blame those people. I think they were dangerously manipulated, and it could happen to anybody in a situation where their belief systems are taken in a way that they are twisted. I don't like to assume that I'm above something that's happened to another group of people, because it's happened so many times in our society before, and it's quite insidious to see that happen.
The whole thing about a lot of these religious groups, it's all about the money, because my mother was a devout Baptist. She was, she taught Sunday school. She was there for everyone. And when my dad died, the preacher at the Baptist church, instead of coming up and comforting the widow, he came up and wanted to know if my dad had left anything for the church. And it's like, what? I mean, he's still lying there at the front of the church, and you want to know if there was money in it for you. And it's like,
so we already have capitalism. We already have the system of capitalism taking advantage of this audience, and then you bring politics into that, and on top of that, and it just becomes basically completely broken down.
Yeah, politics and money have done a lot to really make life a lot less livable, for a lot of people. It just, people used to be able to, go to their churches and feel good coming away. And there's a lot less of that going on, thanks to politics and money.
So I'm curious, if we're talking about 23 in the dust and some of the things that we're sort of leaving behind, is there anything that we're looking forward to in 24? Do we see like any opportunity, or do we see anything that might surprise us or shift in any particular way? Or are we just kind of sort of plodding ahead, like plowing through that dust, making more dirt?
Fear and loathing come to mind.
Fear and loathing.
I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be a rough year. There's all of this the political divisions are going to start overheating, and there's going to be, because it's a political year, there's going to be an acceleration of tensions. That's probably an understatement. And there may be violence. The American systems that we have all, come to depend on are going to be strained. We have a lot of concerns about, for instance, the Supreme Court right now doesn't appear to be an actual judicial body anymore. It's political, and it's dominated by the members of a particular party, and they are making decisions that don't seem consistent with past jurisprudence. I think that it's going to be a difficult year politically. I think it really is. And my concern is that we're going to see violence. We're already seeing violence, not here, but we see violence in Ukraine. We see violence in the Middle East. We see that, this problem between Israel and Palestine, Likud and Hamas have ginned this thing up. And I don't know, I suspect that the attack on the Ukraine and the attack on Israel are related. And that they're related in that they were driven by, and this is a conspiracy theory, and you could toss me out for this. You can say, John's spreading a conspiracy theory, but it just occurred to me that it would serve the interests of, say, Putin or whoever Putin's little clan might be of wealthy autocrats that are trying to, expand their control, increase their power. It would make sense for them to support these chaotic, violent events, these wars that drain the energy and the power of the United States and its allies in trying to support, a particular side of the war. Or in the case of Israel, it's sort of like we're in kind of a really difficult situation because there's a lot of people who are sympathetic to the Palestinians, not to Hamas necessarily, but to the Palestinians. And then there are, of course, people who are sympathetic to Israel, though not necessarily to Likud or to Netanyahu. I mean, it doesn't even make sense for these two countries to be fighting the way that they are, and for them to completely fail year after year to cooperate, and for it to come to a head like this. It's kind of weird, the timing of it, though. It happened the timing of the attack by Hamas is suspect as far as I'm concerned. And the timing of the attack on the Ukraine is, I think, also suspect.
Well, Iran has been involved in a lot of the ginning up of all of this, because you look at what's happening in the Red Sea, the drone attacks, missile attacks, and stuff from the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracies going on. The Russians have been really doing everything they can to put disinformation into every area. They have started doing AI-generated disinformation into Ukraine, and I'm expecting them to be doing a lot into the whole Mideast conflict. Just anything to stir people up and distract from their problems at home. That's basically what Putin's doing.
Yep. And I do not know the answer. I don't know what people like us can do. What occurred to me the other day, though, and it hit me pretty hard, and actually it's kind of funny. I think this hit me when I was watching Nasuti Gatwa as Doctor Who, and really appreciating that, that whole thing. And I don't know, I just started thinking about how we have this huge this kind of fantastic diversity of human beings on this planet and in the U.S. and in other countries, that we're really starting to kind of come into a sense of something greater than just, a particular race or a particular political preference or a particular sexual preference. There was just this sense of a freer culture, and a sense that people could be creative and that they could be open and that it could be, they could be joyful. And this is all just being suppressed like this right now. And I think it's on us to stand up to that and to have a say about that. And I can imagine, people maybe need to be showing up somewhere, maybe, protests, demonstrations, peaceful, of course, in various places. I think, I mentioned to Susie that maybe it's time for another march on our Capitol, because some of the worst stuff that's happening is happening right here in Texas, is happening right down there at the Capitol.
Yes, yeah, no matter what your views are, the stuff going on in the Capitol impact a lot of people. The immigrants, women, the disabled, you name it. And there's a bunch of people there that they just really don't care. They don't want you to care either. They would just rather you gave them some money so they could stay in office. And I watched the news today. They had a retiring member of the Texas Supreme Court, Hecht, and he had been in there for he's reaching his expiration date for being on the Supreme Court at the age of 75. And he was even saying how he hated to see money in politics impacting this, because he's an old school, judge. And I mean, he's a Republican, but he's one of those that said you need to just go by what the law says rather than what your political leader says.
I think that we're seeing, what is being described as this sense of a lack of humanity in these spaces that, really should be about, community and humanity and kind of in service of, and instead it's, been twisted around and works against us. But going back to what John was saying, which I did find very inspirational in the context of, and I've heard other people express this too, it's like, what do we do when, the world around us is suffering and people are dying and everybody's hurt? And there's this is like, we should be, I believe, active, and we should be really living our lives in a way that if you weren't in a state of suffering, you would be honoring life. And there's this, I have this like very strong sense that we often feel very helpless and paralyzed. And, there's a lot of mental anguish. I saw today they were doing an advertisement for Meet the Press is going to be focused on mental health in America on Sunday on Meet the Press. And they're going to be talking about heightened rates of depression, anxiety, suicide, etc., across our country. And when we just have this conversation around, capitalism and politics invading our spirituality, and we, talk about the potential for the blend of diversity and the possibility for, all of these different, ideals and minds and people coming together in positive ways. But first we have to get through this sort of mucky muck of this old broken system that is clinging for dear life. But it's not sustainable. It's just simply not sustainable. What's happening, the wars that are happening, the putting the money and the politics ahead of human spirit and basic functional needs, just like all of these things, it's like there'll be a handful of people with all the money in the world and a whole bunch of, dead people around them. And that's, I don't believe that's going to happen, because I fundamentally believe, like, to the point of what John was speaking to, that spirit, I believe in it. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe more than I should. I just believe that spirit will come forward. I believe that, I talk to people all over the world every single day, and people they want to be connected. They want to see things change. They know that things need to change. And I mean, like, it doesn't matter where they're at. The message is really consistent.
They want to cooperate.
They they want that, and I say that gives me hope when I hear that. When I hear people, I mean, even when they're expressing the anguish of not knowing the answer or not knowing how, and I, I always try to tell them the same thing. It's like, bring it back to what you can control. It's like, you can either contribute to better energy or worse energy. I don't know how else to put it. You can either, and if you have the ability and the power, if we're in a privileged space where I'm not currently being assaulted and I can breathe clean air to the best degree that I can in the environment that I'm in, and these things are, then yeah, that to me, I owe it to myself and to the world around me to live a good life. That doesn't mean, like, that's not about extravagance or, again, or I don't know, physical objects or anything like that, but living a good life, making good choices, and helping people around me, and adding to the positivity of the world, not taking from it. That's sort of what I feel like my responsibility is in the space that I'm in, because because I can't go fight a war. I literally can't. Nobody would want me to. It would just be one extra casualty very quickly, very quickly.
John said a dirty word earlier,
What
cooperate. And you know that in the political sphere, if you cooperate with the other party, then you're a traitor somehow. And that wasn't always that way. I used to, when I was reporting on politics, back in the 70s and 80s, I saw a lot of cooperation. This was in California where I was. The Republicans in California and the Democrats in California, yeah, they hated each other sort of, but they knew that they had to come to some sort of agreement to keep things going. Otherwise, you either have, just things falling completely apart, or you have a lot of people really pissed off. So politicians were able to say, well, okay, I'll do this if you do that. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but there's none of that. Anybody that dares to cooperate across the party lines now is considered either a rhino or a Democrat traitor. It just depends on what they're voting on.
To me, that's just more of a sign of like where it's a failing, unsustainable system. Because that's not how the system is designed. In reality, the system is designed so that that conflict that would happen between those two parties would be conflict that ideally would inspire innovation. Ideally, you would have, one side going, hey, we need this way, and the other side going, we need this way. And working together, they recognize how they're going to do something in a way. And that's idealistic. I get it. I'm taking it to that highest level. But we've devolved into the state where there's not even, they don't even see each other as human. I mean, there's like, they're not even, and there's no starting point. So it's not like you can meet somebody where they're at if you don't even acknowledge their humanity. And that's on both sides. Frankly, that's true for both sides. I've heard that verbalized in different ways from both sides of people. I've heard, liberal or Democrat or however you want to. I hate labels a whole bunch because none of them fit for me. But to the degree that I have to, we're forced to align in this very dualistic binary society that we're in. But that binary system is breaking down. And it continues. That's why we will probably end up with probably not just a third party, but probably like 5 or 7, because that's really what needs to happen. 3 is really just that's not really making that much change in all honesty.
Well, we're down to about maybe 8 minutes of this thing. And I was just wondering if everyone had a little short list of the great things that happened to you personally in 2023. How about you, Don? What do you have on your good list of things that really, made 2023 more livable for you personally?
No, I got my dishwasher fixed.
That
helped. I went to Alaska.
Oh, that's right.
And that was quite a trip. And at one point, I was probably like 100 miles south of the North Pole, because we were up in the Yukon. And that territory is pretty vast and wild, and kind of opens you up to be there. So that was pretty great. That's one thing I can think of. I'm not sure what else. I mean, I can say that here at Plutopia, we've had a ton of great conversations, not just this year, but over several years. And I realized today, we were doing an interview today that where somebody just mentioned that, oh, hey, you've got a lot of great interviews there. I think I'm going to listen to some of those. I don't think enough people know about the stuff that we've been doing. We get a respectable number of people listening and streaming
We have some
But
people who are listening too. I found,
yeah.
and that's encouraging.
But
But our interview today was great. It's nice to have someone say, "I really like what you're doing." It's like, wow.
yeah, exactly. Or it was like, who was it the other day? We had a guest the other day who had real positive comments specifically about the thing that I did, where I came in and talked about the early internet, and I felt a boost from that, from hearing somebody say, "Oh yeah, man, that really resonated with me. I remember that stuff." But I feel kind of proud of the work that we've done.
Yeah.
And that's been a plus this year and for several years.
Well, as far as my big pluses for the year, I was able to wrestle with Medicare. A lot of wrestling, a lot of dirty language and threats to get Medicare to provide a nice electric wheelchair for my wife. And using that wheelchair, I was finally able to get her out in public for the first time since basically since her breast cancer surgery, which has been about 3.5 years. And we went out to the Armadillo Christmas Bazaar, and just being able to see her enjoy freedom, because all her journeys outside the house have been medical appointments, doctors, and whatever. And so that made my day.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's great.
So
It's your turn, Stephanie.
my big highlight for the year is, I'm going to be a grandmother in February.
Oh,
Congratulations.
cool.
Thank you. And I'm extremely excited. And another big highlight, and I say this without any facetiousness at all, I did not get a divorce this year.
Good. Very good.
After 35 years, I'm very proud of that. I always like to say a really long marriage is like a whole bunch of short marriages kind of linked all together.
Oh, wow. And you mentioned that. I can't believe I left that out. Marcia and I had our 50th wedding anniversary this year.
God. There you go.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that was pretty
That's
great,
an amazing
too.
highlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're coming up on, I guess it's 45, and I can't believe that my wife has put up with me and hadn't put a bullet into me yet. And she's good.
Me and my husband have often said that we have saved 2 other people from a life of misery, but we were made for each other. It just works out that way sometimes.
Well, I think we can all look forward to doing more of these kind of things during the year, no matter what's going on in the world. If you're able to keep your personal life in some sort of control, or keep happiness involved in it, it makes life a lot more livable.
It does. And I bring it up on purpose because I know a lot of people have struggled, and it really took a lot of work, and, it's something that'll continue to take work. But, for us, it's a highlight. It's something that I'm pretty sure we're not going to get divorced between now and Monday. So I can pretty solidly go like, yeah, we made it through 23. Yeah. It's like, so I'm happy. I'm going to be a grandma. I'm happy I'm going to be a married grandma. And I went viral this year on social media. So that was kind of a highlight too, in its own way, even though a weird one in some ways too.
It's pretty great, though.
It was cool. It's been cool. It's been a learning lesson for sure.
You'll enjoy the grandma thing. My daughter has produced 5 grandchildren, and they have produced, last count, 4 or 5 great grandchildren. So it's like, at this point, I go, it's over for me. My credibility is shot. I'm a great grandpa.
Great grandma. I couldn't be more thrilled, honestly. It's been a joyful year just watching her go through that.
Can you hear my cat?
I do.
She wants out.
Cat in.
Oh, there you go.
She's telling us what her highlights for the year have been.
I'm surprised she put up with us for so long.
We human centric. Let Kitty have a word there, John.
Absolutely.
I let her out. I let her go.
Back when I had cats, I haven't
She's
had
been
a couple of years, but I've had dozens of them, and they always love to come into the studio. Not when I'm doing something not with a microphone on, but as soon as the mic's on, they're like, "Wow, hello." It's like, okay, thanks. But I do miss not having a
yeah,
noise.
she was snoozing over there through the whole show, and I was a little surprised she didn't get up earlier.
So
She usually doesn't have much tolerance for listening to me sit here and talk, and of course she can't hear your side of it, so she thinks I'm just talking to myself.
She thinks you're
She
talking
thinks
to
I've
her.
gone crazy.
Like, what are you saying?
Or to her, yeah.
she's probably had to call 911. He's talking to himself again. Well, folks, that was a lot of fun.
Well, this is it. This is the end of the last show of the year.
Look forward to the first one of the year coming up. And I hope everyone.
Right on. So I'll see you.
Sure.
I'll see you in 2024.
Okay.
See y'all next year.
Right on. All right. Off we